I've brought up Julian Lage in a lot of my videos, so it must be of no surprise that he's a big inspiration of mine. Early last year, Julian offered private lessons for a limited time, and I jumped at the opportunity. He's hardly shied away from interviews, but there were still so many questions I wanted his take on that haven't been asked in those interviews. Like many of my heroes, or really any guitar aficionado, I think if you just asked him, hey, could you talk about guitar for 30 minutes? He could pick a topic and easily fill the half hour. He's also similar to Brian Baker, a guitarist I interviewed a few years back, in that he's a child prodigy. My interview with Brian went about 3 hours, and I'm sure I could easily talk to Julian for that long. I find it really interesting to try to get the perspective of these prodigies who are around my same age but have been playing guitar for twice as long. That means they've had twice as long to plateau, to get out of a plateau, to give themselves new challenges, to have new challenges brought upon them, to overcome them, everything. Not only that, they're able to play for that long and still retain that curious, excited mind. So here are some of the key takeaways from my lesson with Julian Lage. Also, don't forget, if you like what you see here, please comment, like, subscribe, comment, whatever. It's very much appreciated. So one of the first things Julian said that took me by surprise is that he doesn't practice very much, maybe a couple hours, but he thinks about the guitar a lot. Now, to some people, 2 hours might seem like a lot of time, and to others, it might seem like a fraction of what you'd expect from someone who's so great at guitar. I wasn't really thinking of it in terms of how it affected him, just the idea of thinking a lot about the guitar, even if you're not playing. It kind of reminded me of those moments when you're having a conversation with someone, and then you step away from the conversation going, I should have said this, I should have said that. Sometimes it's easier to have a plan of attack when you're able to conceptualize it away from the moment. Sometimes when I listen back to a recording of me playing a song, I'm not really surprising myself because I'm like, yeah, that's what I would do there, that's what I would do there. But if I wrote out a solo or tried to conceptualize one before I started playing the guitar, that solo might turn out different. Sometimes when you're playing through a tune, you just kind of want to sound good right now. It's hard to take these leaps and chances knowing that you might get stuck. So the main thing I took away from that is something that I'll be reminded of over and over again, and probably need to be reminded of over and over again. That is that no matter how much I just run exercises, that doesn't make me a better musician, that makes me better at running exercises. And that it's the thoughtful practicing that makes the biggest difference. The next thing that he brought up is playing new ideas in a solo arrangement every day. Now, he plays a lot of solo guitar. I've played obviously a lot more solo guitar in the last couple of years, but if you don't want to play solo guitar, or especially solo jazz guitar, by all means, these concepts will still work over a backing track over the genre of your choice. The main concept is that once you have that new idea that you conceptualized earlier, that you apply it day after day. The idea here, of course, is that the more you repeat something, the more second nature it can become. Not only that, if you have an interesting musical idea, starting it on beats 1, 2, 3, or 4, or the and of each of those beats, or whatever, over different chords, different progressions, all of that is worthwhile, and it takes a lot of time to experiment. That's definitely something else I got from this, is that Julian really just allows for tons of time to sit in an idea so you can become a master of it as opposed to just experiencing it on a surface level. The next thing he mentioned is to start your practice routine with something you enjoy and just play, and that it'll dictate what you need to practice. I've personally done this a lot with chords where I might choose the path of least resistance or chords that I already know just because I don't want to think of a really cool voicing in the moment. Especially if I'm playing over a tune with a metronome for 10 straight minutes, I'll notice that I have comfortable chords and uncomfortable chords. The comfortable chords being the ones that I already know, that I already am familiar with, that I know how they sound, and uncomfortable chords being ones that I'm like, oh, I bet this would sound neat, but I don't necessarily nail it, my time wavers, I might flub a note, etc. By doing this a lot, I've realized that sometimes I should be picking chords with less notes in them. It ends up giving me more control and limits unnecessary movements. So let me play a little bit of the standard There Will Never Be Another You. I'll play a little bit of it and using comfortable chords or bigger voicings, and then I'll take the opposite approach. Another thing Julian brought up is to have a good ratio between practicing and playing. One of my teachers from undergrad, David Tronzo, told me this also at some point. When you know a lot about music or guitar but don't really have a lot of playing experience, sometimes it can lead to less than musical situations. Like if I have no experience playing through AC/DC songs, I might approach playing them too calmly and it'll sound like this. But if I play AC/DC songs quite a bit more, I'll realize that maybe I should be hitting with all downstrokes, hitting with a bit more intent, and I'll be able to get the feel a bit better. This can go for something as small as strumming your way through an AC/DC song or just about anything. A lot of times we get caught up in practicing because it's like, well, you got to put in this amount of hours and you got to learn everything to even be able to step up to the plate for playing. That isn't always necessarily true. Sometimes it's how well you play with what you know. Julian's really aware of all the things that can go wrong with your body when you're playing and is a big supporter of the Alexander technique. He mentioned he warms up in a way that lets him know how his body is feeling that day and keeps him in tune with himself, as opposed to just mindlessly doing warm-up exercises. This was a very interesting approach to me because I'm used to hearing, you should do these warm-up exercises or you will hurt yourself, duh. This approach is really more about being in tune with your whole body, what's feeling flexible that day, what isn't, what's feeling strong that day, what isn't. Obviously, even if you wake up feeling good and feeling rested and feeling strong, that doesn't mean just play at your top speed constantly. You still might hurt yourself. But it does mean to be a little bit more aware than just how your hand's feeling. Sometimes it might be your hand, your forearm, your arm, your shoulder, your back, your neck. All these things kind of need to be in tune, and maybe some light stretching would help more than running exercises. I liked the importance that he put on being aware of your entire body and taking care of your entire body, because as we know, one thing goes wrong, it can affect something in a completely different area. The idea of possible injury isn't meant to scare anyone, it's usually just to let people know, hey, you need to be aware of your body. The last thing I want to share with you that Julian mentioned was something really interesting to me. He said he would write down all the negative thoughts that would cloud his brain when he was practicing, as well as all the thoughts that were telling him that he should be practicing when he wasn't. I was surprised to find out that someone like Julian, who's been described as a prodigy since before he was 10 years old, would have these nagging negative thoughts. Whether it be the voice when you're practicing that says, oh, you should know this by now. Oh, I can't believe you're struggling with this. Or if it's the voice when you're not practicing going, all the great musicians practiced all the time. What makes you think you're so cool that you don't need to practice all the time? It was really interesting to me that this guitar hero of mine, who's at the top of his game, would feel that way. As I recall, the idea behind this isn't to give these negative thoughts more power by writing them down. It's, at the end of your day, you read them back and realize if someone else was telling you this, you wouldn't give them the time of day. And that, just like them, you don't give these things the time of day. And after you're done reading them, you throw that piece of paper right in the trash where all those comments belong. All the information I shared with you today is really just scratching the surface of the amount that Julian has to offer all of us. Julian still offers masterclasses, and I would highly recommend joining one or purchasing some of the old ones that have been recorded. I know he's touring soon for the new album he's releasing, and hopefully I'll see you at the LA show. I hope you found some of the things he mentioned to me as interesting as I did. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you all next week.